The story opens in the bustling city of Phoenix, Arizona, where Dr. Marcus Thompson, a CDC epidemiologist, receives an urgent call about a strange illness spreading through downtown hospitals. Patients are arriving with severe bite wounds, exhibiting aggressive behavior and an unusual resistance to pain medication. Meanwhile, construction worker Jake Rodriguez notices his co-worker Billy acting strangely after being bitten by what they assumed was a rabid homeless person. Billy's skin has turned pale, his eyes clouded over, and he moves with an unnatural jerky gait. Across town, high school teacher Amanda Foster is conducting her evening biology class when screams echo from the hallway. She peers through the door's window to see students running in panic as something horrifying pursues them. The emergency broadcast system crackles to life, advising citizens to remain indoors and avoid contact with anyone showing signs of illness. Dr. Thompson arrives at Phoenix General Hospital to find chaos. Medical staff are barricaded in the break room while infected patients roam the corridors, their movements erratic and predatory. The first zombie attack occurs when Billy corners Jake in the construction site's tool shed. Jake barely escapes, grabbing a crowbar as Billy lunges with supernatural strength, his jaw snapping with an inhuman hunger. Jake strikes back, horrified as Billy doesn't react to what should have been a debilitating blow. Meanwhile, Amanda leads a group of students through the school's back exit, but they're confronted by their infected principal, Mrs. Henley, whose professional demeanor has been replaced by a primal, terrifying hunger. Detective Lisa Martinez receives multiple reports of violent attacks across the city, each involving victims who seem impervious to pain and exhibit cannibalistic behavior. She responds to a call at a local diner where the cook, infected hours earlier, has turned the establishment into a bloodbath. Lisa draws her weapon but hesitates. The infected were once human beings, neighbors, friends. Her hesitation nearly costs her life as 3 infected patrons corner her near the kitchen. Dr. Thompson's medical training becomes crucial as he observes the infection's rapid progression. Victims succumb within hours, their vital signs flatline, yet they continue moving. He witnesses a horrifying transformation when a patient dies on the operating table, only to rise minutes later with an insatiable appetite for human flesh. The hospital's generators fail, plunging sections into darkness where groans and shuffling footsteps echo ominously. As night falls, the infection spreads exponentially. Jake finds refuge in an abandoned auto shop with 3 other survivors: retired military veteran Colonel Robert Hayes, pregnant nurse Patricia Williams, and teenage tech enthusiast Danny Kim. They reinforce the building's entrances while monitoring emergency broadcasts that grow increasingly desperate. The government's initial reassurances quickly dissolve into martial law declarations and evacuation orders. Amanda's group takes shelter in the school's library, using bookcases to barricade entrances. Among her companions are star athlete Kevin Johnson, anxious sophomore Emma Martinez, and custodian Henry Thompson, Dr. Thompson's estranged brother. They discover that the infected are attracted to sound and movement but seem to have limited problem-solving abilities. However, their relentless persistence and growing numbers make them a formidable threat. Detective Martinez establishes communication with other law enforcement units, learning that the outbreak isn't confined to Phoenix. Similar incidents are reported in Los Angeles, Denver, and Las Vegas. She teams up with paramedic Tony Rodriguez, Jake's brother, and together they navigate the increasingly dangerous streets, rescuing survivors while gathering intelligence about the infection's origin and spread patterns. The part concludes with multiple survivor groups scattered across the city, each facing their first night of the apocalypse. Dr. Thompson makes a crucial discovery about the infection's transmission method while trapped in the hospital's research wing. Jake's group encounters their first large horde of zombies attracted by a car alarm. Amanda realizes that the school's PA system could either be their salvation or their doom. Detective Martinez uncovers evidence suggesting the outbreak might not be entirely natural. As emergency services collapse and communication networks fail, each character must confront a harsh new reality. The world they knew is ending and survival depends on adapting quickly to rules they never imagined. The infected continue to multiply, their numbers growing with each fallen survivor, setting the stage for an epic struggle between the living and the undead. The night brings new horrors as the zombies seem to grow more coordinated, suggesting that humanity's fight for survival has only just begun. The first rays of dawn pierce through the smoke-filled sky over Phoenix, revealing a city transformed into a nightmare landscape. Dr. Marcus Thompson crouches behind an overturned hospital bed, his white coat stained with blood that isn't his own. The corridors that once echoed with the purposeful footsteps of medical staff now reverberate with the haunting groans of the infected. He clutches a fire axe taken from an emergency station, his hands trembling not from fear but from the shocking realization that his Hippocratic oath to do no harm has been shattered by necessity. Through the smoke-stained windows, he can see military helicopters circling the city, their searchlights cutting through the morning haze like desperate fingers trying to grasp hope from chaos. 3 floors below, in the hospital's basement morgue, Dr. Thompson makes a horrifying discovery. The bodies that arrived during the night have begun to stir, their death certificates meaningless as they claw their way off metal tables. The infection doesn't just spread through bites, it reanimates the recently deceased. This revelation sends ice through his veins as he realizes every hospital, every morgue, every funeral home has become a breeding ground for the undead. He documents this crucial information in his smartphone, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, might use this knowledge to fight back. Meanwhile, across the city in the fortified auto shop, Jake Rodriguez and his unlikely companions face their own revelation. Colonel Robert Hayes, drawing on decades of military experience, has organized their group into a functioning unit. Pregnant nurse Patricia Williams tends to Danny Kim's injured arm, a cut from broken glass, thankfully not a bite, while Jake and the colonel reinforce their barricades. They've learned through trial and error that the infected are drawn to loud noises, discovering this when Danny accidentally knocked over a tool rack and attracted a dozen zombies to their location. Now they move like ghosts, communicating through hand signals Hayes taught them, every footstep calculated to avoid drawing attention. The colonel's military background proves invaluable as he explains the strategic situation. This isn't just Phoenix, he whispers, monitoring emergency radio frequencies. Reports are coming in from 17 major cities. Military response is overwhelmed. We're on our own. His words carry the weight of experience, having seen how quickly organized defense can crumble when facing an enemy that doesn't follow conventional rules of engagement. Patricia, despite her pregnancy making her vulnerable, contributes crucial medical knowledge about treating wounds and preventing infection, knowledge that could mean the difference between life and death in their new reality. At Roosevelt High School, Amanda Foster has transformed from educator to protector, leading her group of students and staff through the labyrinthine hallways they once knew by heart. Henry Thompson, the school custodian and Dr. Thompson's estranged brother, uses his intimate knowledge of the building's layout to guide them through maintenance tunnels and hidden passages. Star athlete Kevin Johnson has become their scout, his speed and agility making him perfect for reconnaissance missions. Emma Martinez, the anxious sophomore, surprises everyone by demonstrating remarkable composure under pressure, her keen observational skills helping them avoid infected lurking in classrooms. They've discovered that the infected have poor vision but exceptional hearing, learning this when Emma accidentally stepped on broken glass and attracted 3 zombies from the gymnasium. Henry's knowledge of the school's layout becomes their lifeline as he leads them through a maze of service corridors to the roof, where they can signal for help while staying out of reach of the growing horde below. Amanda realizes that her teaching skills, patience, clear communication, and the ability to keep people focused under stress are perfectly suited for keeping their group alive and functional. Detective Lisa Martinez and paramedic Tony Rodriguez witness the military's initial response firsthand as they navigate the chaos-filled streets. Roadblocks have been established around the city's perimeter, but the infection spreads faster than containment efforts can adapt. They watch in horror as a military convoy becomes overwhelmed when infected civilians, mistaken for refugees, breach their defensive positions. The sight of trained soldiers falling to teeth and claws rather than bullets drives home the reality that conventional tactics are useless against an enemy that feels no pain and fears no death. Tony's emergency medical training becomes crucial as they rescue survivors from various locations throughout the city. His ambulance, modified with reinforced windows and armor plating, becomes a mobile command center and medical facility. Lisa's detective instincts prove equally valuable as she pieces together the infection spread pattern, realizing that it follows major transportation routes and population centers. Together, they begin developing new protocols for survivor rescue operations, learning that speed and stealth often matter more than firepower. As the second day of the apocalypse dawns, each group has evolved from terrified civilians into hardened survivors. They've learned the new rules of their world. Silence is life, trust is earned, and humanity's greatest enemy isn't the zombies themselves, but the despair that threatens to consume those still fighting to stay alive. The infected continue to multiply, but the survivors have begun to adapt, setting the stage for the greater challenges ahead. The third dawn since the outbreak breaks over Phoenix like a blood-red omen, casting an eerie glow over abandoned streets littered with overturned vehicles and broken glass. Dr. Marcus Thompson emerges from the hospital's emergency exit, his medical bag slung across his shoulder containing crucial research notes about the infection's progression. The morning air carries an unsettling silence broken only by distant groans and the occasional crash of breaking glass. He moves carefully through the hospital parking garage, stepping over abandoned gurneys and medical equipment, his destination clear in his mind: Roosevelt High School, where emergency broadcasts indicated a survivor group might be holding out. The city's transformation is complete and horrifying. Traffic lights blink uselessly at empty intersections where abandoned cars sit like metal tombstones. Store windows are shattered, their contents spilled across sidewalks where desperate people fought for supplies before succumbing to the infection. Dr. Thompson passes a overturned school bus, its yellow paint now streaked with dark stains, and forces himself not to look too closely at the small forms scattered around it. The evacuation zones promised by emergency broadcasts have become death traps, as evidenced by the military vehicles he encounters. Their occupants either fled or transformed into the very threat they came to contain. At Roosevelt High School, Amanda Foster stands watch on the roof with Henry Thompson, scanning the horizon through a pair of binoculars salvaged from the science department. They've spent the night fortifying their position, using desks and filing cabinets to create choke points in the hallways below. Emma Martinez has proven surprisingly resourceful, organizing their meager supplies with methodical precision, while Kevin Johnson maintains their improvised communication system using the school's PA equipment. Henry's intimate knowledge of the building has revealed hidden advantages: emergency supply caches, alternate routes, and structural weak points they can exploit if overwhelmed. The group watches in fascination and horror as a lone figure approaches the school's perimeter fence. Dr. Thompson waves a white cloth tied to a broken antenna, the universal signal for peaceful intentions that Amanda taught her students during their impromptu survival lessons. Henry recognizes his estranged brother immediately, despite the blood-stained clothes and exhausted posture. "Marcus," he breathes, years of family tension momentarily forgotten in the face of mutual survival. Amanda makes the decision to lower a rope ladder, but not before Kevin confirms the approaching figure isn't followed by infected. Meanwhile, across the city near the shopping district, Jake Rodriguez leads his group on a desperate supply run to a nearby pharmacy. Colonel Hayes has identified their critical needs: antibiotics for potential infections, pain medication for Patricia Williams' pregnancy complications, and basic medical supplies their makeshift first aid kit lacks. Danny Kim's technical skills have proved invaluable, as he's rigged a battery-powered radio scanner that allows them to monitor emergency frequencies and survivor communications. They've learned that several groups are scattered throughout Phoenix, each struggling with the same basic challenges: food, water, medical supplies, and secure shelter. The pharmacy raid becomes a tactical operation under Hayes' guidance. Jake and Danny create a distraction at the building's rear entrance while the Colonel and Patricia enter through a broken window at the front. They work in practiced silence, their movements coordinated through hand signals perfected over their 2 days together. Patricia's medical knowledge proves crucial as she identifies the most valuable medications, filling their backpacks with antibiotics, insulin, and other life-saving drugs that will become precious commodities in their new world. Detective Lisa Martinez and Tony Rodriguez have established a mobile rescue operation, using the reinforced ambulance to extract survivors from various locations throughout the city. They've learned to read the signs of infected presence: scattered personal belongings, broken windows at ground level, and an unnatural silence that precedes zombie ambushes. Their latest rescue involves a family trapped in a second-story apartment, forced to create increasingly dangerous diversions to reach survivors without attracting the growing hordes that seem to multiply with each passing hour. The convergence begins when Dr. Thompson's arrival at the school coincides with Jake's group seeking higher ground to establish radio contact with other survivors. Amanda's decision to activate the school's emergency beacon, a calculated risk that could attract both survivors and infected, draws both groups toward Roosevelt High School. Henry's emotional reunion with his brother creates an unexpected leadership dynamic, as Dr. Thompson's medical expertise combines with the survival skills each group has developed independently. As the groups begin to merge, they face their first major decision as a united force: whether to remain at the school or seek a more defensible location. The school offers height advantage and multiple escape routes, but limited supplies and increasing zombie activity suggest they'll need to move soon. Dr. Thompson shares his crucial discovery about the infection's ability to reanimate the dead, fundamentally changing their understanding of the threat they face. Patricia's pregnancy adds urgency to their planning, as they realize they're not just surviving for themselves, but for the next generation's chance at life in this transformed world. The morning sun climbs higher, and with it, the temperature rises, bringing new challenges as the infected seem to become more active in the growing heat. The combined survivor group stands in the school's main hallway, their voices echoing off lockers as they debate their next move. Dr. Marcus Thompson spreads a city map across a cafeteria table, marking locations with a red pen while his brother Henry points out structural advantages of various buildings. The reunion between the Thompson brothers has been awkward but productive, years of family disputes set aside in favor of survival pragmatism. Amanda Foster finds herself naturally mediating between different personalities and leadership styles, her teaching experience invaluable in managing group dynamics as tensions rise over critical decisions. Colonel Hayes advocates for the abandoned Westfield shopping mall on the city's outskirts, his military mind analyzing its defensive potential. Multiple entrances we can control, upper levels for observation, and enough retail space to establish different operational zones, he explains, pointing to the mall's layout on Jake Rodriguez's smartphone map. The structure offers what their current location lacks: sustainable long-term shelter with existing infrastructure for large groups. Danny Kim's technical assessment supports the Colonel's recommendation. The mall's electrical systems could potentially be restored, providing lighting and communication capabilities their current situation lacks. Patricia Williams raises medical concerns about relocating, her pregnancy making travel increasingly difficult and dangerous. We need to consider what happens if we encounter a large group of infected during the move, she argues, her nursing experience highlighting the risks of transporting their wounded and vulnerable members. Emma Martinez, despite being the youngest in the group, offers a crucial observation. The mall has a pharmacy, medical clinic, and sporting goods store. Everything we need in one location. Her methodical analysis of their supply needs demonstrates maturity beyond her years, earning respect from the adults who initially saw her as a liability. Kevin Johnson volunteers for reconnaissance, his athletic abilities making him the logical choice for scouting the proposed destination. Detective Lisa Martinez and Tony Rodriguez arrive just as the group finalizes their relocation plans, their ambulance providing both transportation and mobile medical facilities. Lisa's law enforcement experience adds another layer to their strategic planning, as she identifies potential security weaknesses and suggests defensive modifications for their new sanctuary. The convergence of different skill sets creates a formidable team, but also introduces new personality conflicts as strong-willed individuals struggle to establish a unified command structure. The journey to Westfield Mall becomes a carefully orchestrated military-style operation under Colonel Hayes' direction. They travel in stages, with Kevin and Danny serving as advanced scouts who signal the all-clear before the main group moves. Dr. Thompson carries his research notes and medical supplies, determined to continue documenting the infection's progression even as they focus on survival. Henry guides them through maintenance tunnels and service roads he knows from his years working in city infrastructure, avoiding main streets where abandoned vehicles create natural choke points perfect for zombie ambushes. Their first major obstacle comes at the mall's parking lot, where a dozen infected wander aimlessly between cars. Jake Rodriguez demonstrates the close-quarters combat skills he's developed, using his construction experience to wield improvised weapons effectively while maintaining the stealth necessary to avoid attracting more zombies. Amanda coordinates the group's movement with hand signals, her classroom management skills translating surprisingly well to tactical coordination. They reach the mall service entrance without major incident, but the sight of infected employees still wearing their retail uniforms serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly their world changed. Inside the mall, they discover both opportunities and challenges. The structure is sound, with multiple levels providing excellent defensive advantages and escape routes. However, they're not the first survivors to consider this location. Evidence of previous occupation includes makeshift barricades, scattered supplies, and ominous bloodstains that suggest the mall's earlier inhabitants met a grim fate. Dr. Thompson examines the scene with forensic precision, determining that the previous group was overwhelmed rather than succumbing to internal conflict, which provides valuable intelligence about zombie behavior patterns in enclosed spaces. The group establishes their base of operations in the former Spencer's store, its central location providing easy access to multiple mall levels while offering controllable entry points. Patricia sets up a medical station using supplies from the mall's urgent care clinic, while Danny begins assessing the electrical systems for potential restoration. Tony and Lisa patrol the perimeter, identifying weak points in their defenses and planning contingency escape routes. The mall's fountain area becomes their central gathering space, its open design allowing for group meetings while maintaining sight lines to all major approaches. As night falls on their first day in the mall, the group faces a sobering reality. They've found sanctuary, but they're not alone. Sounds from the lower levels suggest that infected employees and shoppers remain trapped in storage areas and service corridors. Henry's knowledge of building layouts becomes crucial as they plan systematic clearing operations, while Jake's practical experience with tools and construction helps them modify the space for long-term habitation. The mall offers everything they need to survive, but claiming it will require confronting the undead residents who call it home, setting the stage for their most dangerous challenge yet. The early morning calm at Westfield Mall shatters when Danny Kim's makeshift alarm system, a network of motion sensors salvaged from store security systems, begins blaring throughout their sanctuary. From the upper-level windows, the survivors watch in horror as hundreds of infected emerge from the surrounding neighborhoods, drawn by the electrical activity Danny successfully restored the previous night. The horde moves like a dark tide across the parking lot, their collective groaning creating a sound that seems to vibrate through the mall structure itself. Colonel Hayes immediately recognizes the tactical nightmare they're facing. They're no longer hunters clearing out isolated infected, but prey trapped in their own fortress. Dr. Marcus Thompson takes charge of the medical preparations, knowing that the coming battle will test every skill they've developed. He establishes a triage station in the former radio shack, its central location providing quick access to all defensive positions while remaining protected from the main assault routes. Patricia Williams, despite her pregnancy limiting her mobility, organizes medical supplies with military precision, preparing for the worst-case scenarios her nursing experience tells her are inevitable. Her hands shake slightly as she counts their limited supply of antibiotics, knowing that any serious injuries during the battle could become death sentences in their current situation. Jake Rodriguez and Henry Thompson work frantically to reinforce their defensive positions, using Henry's knowledge of structural engineering and Jake's construction expertise to create choke points and kill zones throughout the mall's main corridors. They drag heavy planters and decorative fixtures to block escalators, forcing the infected into narrow passages where the survivors can engage them with improvised weapons while minimizing their exposure to zombie attacks. Kevin Johnson's athletic agility proves crucial as he runs messages between defensive positions, his speed allowing him to navigate the mall's levels while staying ahead of any infected that breach their outer defenses. Amanda Foster coordinates the overall defense strategy, her teaching experience in managing chaos and keeping people focused under pressure making her a natural battlefield commander. She positions Detective Lisa Martinez and Tony Rodriguez at the main entrance, their law enforcement and emergency response training making them ideal for the critical choke point that will determine whether the horde overruns their sanctuary. Emma Martinez, armed with a hockey stick from the sporting goods store, takes position at the secondary entrance with Danny Kim, their youth and quick reflexes making them effective at close-quarters combat while following Amanda's tactical instructions. The first wave hits with devastating force as infected pour through the mall's main entrance, overwhelming the decorative barriers in minutes through sheer numbers and relentless pressure. Lisa's police training keeps her calm as she fires measured shots with her service weapon, each bullet carefully placed to maximize damage while conserving their limited ammunition. Tony swings a fire axe with surgical precision, his paramedic experience with human anatomy allowing him to strike the most effective target points while maintaining the stamina needed for prolonged combat. The sound of breaking glass echoes through the mall as infected crash through storefronts, forcing the defenders to adapt their strategy as new threats emerge from unexpected directions. Dr. Thompson's medical knowledge becomes a weapon as he shares crucial information about zombie physiology with the fighters, explaining the most effective ways to disable infected while minimizing risk to the defenders. His observations about the undead's inability to feel pain or fatigue help the group understand that their enemies will continue attacking until physically unable to move, fundamentally changing their combat tactics from the law enforcement and military approaches they initially attempted. The battle becomes a desperate test of endurance as the survivors realize they must outlast an enemy that feels no exhaustion, fear, or doubt. The tide turns when Danny's technical expertise provides an unexpected advantage. He manages to activate the mall's fire suppression system, creating a slippery surface that causes infected to lose their footing while barely affecting the survivors who know the layout intimately. Jake's improvised weapons, crafted from construction materials and reinforced with Henry's engineering knowledge, prove devastatingly effective against enemies who show no tactical awareness or self-preservation instincts. The combination of superior positioning, coordinated tactics, and intimate knowledge of their defensive terrain allows the small group of survivors to hold their ground against overwhelming numerical odds. As the last infected falls and silence returns to the mall, the survivors conduct a grim assessment of their situation. Several team members sport bite wounds that require immediate medical attention, testing Dr. Thompson's field surgery skills and their limited supply of antibiotics. The mall's infrastructure has suffered significant damage, requiring extensive repairs before they can consider it truly secure again. Patricia's pregnancy complications, exacerbated by the stress and physical demands of the battle, require constant monitoring and specialized care that stretches their medical resources to the breaking point. The victory comes at a heavy cost that extends beyond physical injuries and damaged infrastructure. Emma Martinez suffers a severe bite wound to her arm during the final moments of the battle, forcing Dr. Thompson to make an agonizing decision about amputation versus the risk of infection spreading. The group realizes that their sanctuary, while successfully defended, has become a beacon that attracts infected from across the city, fundamentally changing their long-term survival strategy. 3 days after the Horde battle, the mall has settled into an uneasy routine as the survivors work to repair damage and treat their wounded. Dr. Marcus Thompson performs daily examinations on Emma Martinez, whose arm amputation has healed remarkably well despite their limited surgical facilities. The group has established a strict infection protocol, with mandatory daily health checks and immediate quarantine procedures for anyone showing suspicious symptoms. However, the stress of constant vigilance and the trauma of recent losses has begun to fracture the tight bonds that held them together during the initial crisis, creating dangerous tensions that threaten their unity from within. Patricia Williams has been struggling with severe pregnancy complications since the battle, experiencing premature contractions that force her to remain bedridden while the others maintain their defensive operations. Her medical condition requires constant attention from Dr. Thompson, straining their already limited resources and creating additional stress for Tony Rodriguez, who has become increasingly protective of his teammate and friend. The responsibility of caring for Patricia while maintaining his paramedic duties to the group has pushed Tony to his physical and emotional limits, making him irritable and prone to conflicts with other survivors who question his medical decisions. The first sign of serious trouble comes when Danny Kim begins displaying subtle behavioral changes that initially seem like exhaustion from his technical work restoring the mall's systems. He becomes increasingly secretive about his activities, working alone in the electronics store during night shifts and avoiding group meals where the survivors traditionally share information and maintain morale. Kevin Johnson notices Danny's strange behavior first, observing him having hushed conversations with himself and displaying an unusual interest in the mall's loading dock areas where they dispose of zombie remains from the recent battle. Amanda Foster attempts to address the growing tensions through group meetings and conflict resolution techniques learned from her teaching experience, but she discovers that classroom management skills have limited effectiveness when dealing with life-and-death stress and post-traumatic reactions. The survivors begin forming small factions based on their pre-apocalypse relationships and shared experiences, with the Thompson brothers often disagreeing about medical versus engineering priorities, while Colonel Hayes clashes with Detective Martinez over security protocols and resource allocation decisions. These internal conflicts distract from more pressing concerns about their long-term survival and defensive preparations. The situation reaches a crisis point when Jake Rodriguez discovers Danny attempting to sabotage their early warning systems, disconnecting motion sensors and disabling alarms that protect them from zombie infiltration. During the confrontation, Danny's behavior becomes increasingly erratic and aggressive, displaying the classic signs of early-stage infection that Dr. Thompson has documented in his research notes. The terrible realization hits the group simultaneously. Danny was bitten during the Horde battle but concealed his injury, allowing the infection to progress while he remained integrated into their survival operations and defensive planning. Dr. Thompson's examination reveals a partially healed bite wound on Danny's shoulder, hidden beneath his jacket for days while the infection slowly transformed his brain chemistry and cognitive functions. The discovery forces the group to confront their worst fear, that one of their own has been compromised and potentially sabotaging their safety while they trusted him with critical responsibilities. Danny's technical knowledge of their defensive systems means he could have disabled their protections at any time, leaving them vulnerable to zombie attacks while they slept or worked on other survival tasks. The group faces an agonizing decision about Danny's fate, with some members advocating for immediate quarantine while others argue for more drastic measures to protect the majority. Colonel Hayes takes a hardline military approach, arguing that infected individuals represent an unacceptable risk to group survival, while Amanda and Dr. Thompson advocate for humane treatment and continued observation. The debate reveals fundamental philosophical differences about survival ethics and the value of individual versus collective safety in their new world reality. Detective Lisa Martinez leads a dangerous mission to rescue survivors from a nearby apartment complex, using the distraction of Danny's situation to prove that the group can still function under pressure while dealing with internal crises. Her team includes Henry Thompson and the recovering Emma Martinez, whose determination to contribute despite her recent amputation demonstrates remarkable resilience and adaptability. The rescue mission succeeds in saving 4 additional survivors, including 2 children and an elderly man with valuable engineering skills, but the operation costs them precious ammunition and medical supplies that they can ill afford to lose. The apartment rescue reveals that other survivor groups throughout the city have been facing similar internal challenges, with infection concealment and resource conflicts creating deadly situations that have destroyed communities from within. The new survivors bring disturbing reports of groups that collapse due to betrayal, paranoia, and the psychological pressure of constant survival stress. These accounts force the mall group to recognize that their current crisis with Danny represents a larger pattern that threatens all survivor communities, requiring new protocols and trust-building measures to prevent future betrayals. As Danny's condition deteriorates rapidly, the group must make their most difficult decision yet while integrating new members who bring both valuable skills and additional security concerns. The incident fundamentally changes their approach to group membership, medical screening, and information sharing, establishing protocols that prioritize collective survival while attempting to maintain the humanity that separates them from the mindless infected they fight against. The morning alarm pierces through the mall's silence as Henry Thompson's improvised early warning system detects movement on a scale that dwarfs their previous encounters. From the upper-level observatory they've established in the former Barnes & Noble, the survivors watch in stunned horror as thousands of infected emerge from every direction, forming a massive convergence that transforms the surrounding landscape into a sea of undead flesh. The horde stretches beyond the horizon, drawn by some unknown stimulus that has unified every zombie in the Phoenix metropolitan area into a single unstoppable force moving directly toward their sanctuary. Dr. Marcus Thompson analyzes the situation with clinical precision while fighting down panic, recognizing that this isn't random zombie behavior but something far more organized and terrifying. His research notes indicate that infected populations sometimes exhibit swarm intelligence during large gatherings, suggesting that their individual mindlessness can transform into collective purpose under certain conditions. The implications are staggering. If zombies can coordinate on this scale, every assumption about their capabilities and limitations requires immediate reevaluation. Patricia Williams, despite her weakened condition from pregnancy complications, helps calculate their ammunition and medical supplies, quickly determining that their resources cannot sustain a prolonged siege against numbers this overwhelming. Colonel Hayes transforms into the battlefield commander his military training prepared him to become, issuing rapid-fire orders that convert their comfortable sanctuary into a fortress prepared for their final stand. Jake Rodriguez and the newly rescued engineer Robert Chin work frantically to reinforce critical structural points while Kevin Johnson and Emma Martinez distribute weapons and ammunition to positions throughout the mall's multiple levels. Amanda Foster coordinates civilian evacuation procedures, identifying escape routes and rally points while maintaining the calm leadership that has held their group together through previous crises. The new survivors from Detective Martinez's recent rescue mission prove their worth immediately, bringing specialized skills that complement the original group's capabilities. 8-year-old Sophie Williams demonstrates remarkable composure for her age, serving as a runner between defensive positions while her teenage brother Marcus Williams assists with ammunition distribution. Elderly engineer Robert Chen's knowledge of structural engineering allows him to identify the mall's most defensible positions and potential weak points that zombies might exploit through sheer pressure and numbers. Detective Lisa Martinez and Tony Rodriguez establish a mobile command center using their reinforced ambulance, preparing for the evacuation they know must come when their defensive positions become untenable. Their law enforcement and emergency response experience provides crucial insight into crowd control and tactical withdrawal under pressure, skills that will determine whether any survivors escape the approaching catastrophe. The ambulance's medical equipment becomes even more valuable as they prepare for the casualties that will inevitably result from their desperate last stand. The assault begins with a deafening crash as the leading edge of the horde collides with the mall's outer barriers, shattering glass storefronts and buckling metal security gates through pure momentum and relentless pressure. The survivors' carefully planned defensive positions hold initially, but the sheer volume of attackers quickly overwhelms choke points that worked effectively against smaller groups. Jake's improvised weapons and Henry's structural modifications buy precious time, but everyone understands that they're fighting a delaying action rather than seeking victory against impossible odds. Dr. Thompson makes the agonizing decision to abandon his research notes and medical equipment, prioritizing lives over scientific knowledge as the defensive perimeter contracts under zombie pressure. Patricia's labor begins during the height of the battle, forcing Tony to choose between his combat duties and his medical responsibilities to deliver a baby under the worst possible circumstances. The mall's upper levels become their final refuge as infected overwhelm the ground floor, forcing survivors to retreat through predetermined withdrawal routes while maintaining covering fire for their most vulnerable members. Emma Martinez's disability from her recent amputation becomes an unexpected advantage as her modified prosthetic, crafted by Robert Chin from Sporting Goods Equipment, allows her to navigate damaged staircases and debris fields more effectively than intact survivors struggling with heavy equipment. Kevin Johnson's athletic abilities prove crucial during the evacuation as he carries supplies and assists Patricia during her difficult labor while zombies swarm through the levels below. The sound of breaking glass and groaning metal echoes throughout the structure as their sanctuary collapses under the assault. The evacuation succeeds through desperate heroism and calculated sacrifice, with Colonel Hayes remaining behind to provide covering fire while the main group escapes through the mall's skylight access. Tony successfully delivers Patricia's baby girl in the back of the ambulance while Jake and Amanda coordinate the survivors' movement toward their predetermined fallback position, a fortified warehouse complex several miles away. Dr. Thompson carries only his most critical medical supplies and infection research data, abandoning months of careful preparation to ensure the group's survival. As they drive away from the burning mall, watching their former sanctuary disappear beneath the zombie horde, the survivors realize they've learned the most important lesson of the apocalypse. Adaptation and mobility matter more than fortification and preparation. The baby's cries mix with the distant groaning of the undead, symbolizing both hope for the future and the ongoing challenges that will define their new existence in a world where yesterday's sanctuary becomes today's death trap. 6 months have passed since the fall of Westfield Mall, and the warehouse complex that became their emergency refuge has transformed into something resembling a thriving community. Dr. Marcus Thompson stands on the reinforced watchtower he designed with Henry's engineering expertise, surveying the compound they've built from desperation and determination. The baby Patricia delivered during their escape, now named Hope Williams, sleeps peacefully in the medical bay that serves as both clinic and nursery, her presence a constant reminder that life continues even in the darkest circumstances. The survivors have learned that survival isn't just about avoiding death. It's about building something worth living for in a world that seems determined to destroy everything good and human. The warehouse complex offers advantages that the mall never could. Multiple buildings connected by secure walkways, industrial infrastructure that supports their growing population, and strategic location near transportation routes that allow for expansion and trade with other survivor communities. Amanda Foster has established a school for the children they've rescued, including Sophie Williams and 3 other youngsters found during their scouting missions. Her classroom occupies the former office space, where she teaches practical survival skills alongside traditional subjects, ensuring that the next generation understands both mathematics and zombie behavior, history, and tactical planning. Jake Rodriguez leads their construction and fortification efforts, directing teams that have expanded their perimeter to include vegetable gardens, workshops, and defensive positions that learned from every mistake made at previous locations. His crews work with materials salvaged from the surrounding industrial district, building structures designed for both functionality and beauty, proving that aesthetic considerations matter for psychological health during long-term survival situations. Henry Thompson's engineering knowledge has revolutionized their approach to infrastructure, creating water purification systems, electrical generation, and waste management solutions that support a population approaching 50 survivors. Detective Lisa Martinez has evolved from law enforcement officer to community security chief, training civilian volunteers in defensive tactics while establishing patrol routes and communication protocols with other survivor settlements throughout Arizona. Her teams have made contact with groups in Tucson, Flagstaff, and Yuma, creating a network of mutual support and information sharing that provides early warning about zombie migrations and resource opportunities. The radio equipment Danny Kim installed before his infection has become the backbone of an intercommunity communication system that spans 3 states. Dr. Thompson's medical research has yielded breakthrough discoveries about the infection's progression and potential treatment options, though a cure remains elusive despite months of careful experimentation and documentation. His clinic serves not only their community but visiting survivors from other settlements who travel specifically to access his medical expertise and pharmaceutical supplies. Patricia Williams has recovered completely from childbirth and returned to her nursing duties, establishing training programs that have created a cadre of medical assistants capable of handling routine healthcare needs without constant physician supervision. The community has developed its own economy based on specialized skills and resource production, with Kevin Johnson organizing athletic training programs that keep residents physically fit while building morale through competitive games and sports leagues. Emma Martinez has become their primary scout and communication specialist, her prosthetic arm modified with radio equipment and navigation tools that make her uniquely effective at long-range reconnaissance missions. The technical skills she learned from Danny before his tragic transformation have made her indispensable for maintaining their electronic systems and establishing contact with distant communities. Tony Rodriguez coordinates their medical supply production, having established relationships with pharmaceutical facilities and other settlements that allow for medication trading and collaborative research projects. His ambulance, now one of 3 emergency vehicles in their fleet, serves as the mobile medical unit for intercommunity healthcare delivery and emergency response. The emergency services background that once made him valuable for rescue operations has evolved into leadership of a regional medical assistance network. Their success has attracted attention from both survivors and threats, requiring constant vigilance and diplomatic skills to manage relationships with neighboring communities while defending against both zombie incursions and human raiders who view their prosperity as a target for exploitation. Colonel Hayes, who survived his heroic rearguard action at the mall by fighting his way to their fallback position, now serves as military advisor and strategic planner for the entire Arizona Survivor Network. His experience has proven invaluable in organizing joint defense operations and coordinating resource-sharing agreements. The warehouse community represents more than survival. It demonstrates that humanity can adapt, grow, and thrive even under the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Hope Williams takes her first steps in the compound's central courtyard, surrounded by adults who have learned that protecting the future requires more than just staying alive. The zombie threat remains constant, with regular patrols and defensive operations maintaining their security perimeter, but the undead no longer define their existence or limit their aspirations for rebuilding civilization. As Dr. Thompson watches the sunset paint the Arizona sky in brilliant orange and purple hues, he reflects on how far they've traveled from that first terrifying night in Phoenix General Hospital. The research notes he salvaged from the mall continue to yield insights, but his greatest discovery has been that human resilience, creativity, and cooperation can overcome even the most impossible odds when people commit to building something better together. Chat controls Sonnet 4.